Thanks, y'all. Thank y'all for coming. This is actually going to be probably a pretty quick meeting. I want to first thank you guys for taking the time out of your schedule to look at all 11 of the applications or RFPs we got in. And it was a lot because they were all different kinds, different types of activities. And you had to couldn't really get in a groove and just go through. Everyone was unique, which I'm glad we had a good response from the public. So, we're going to go over it today. I don't know if you want to go to the next screen for our little purpose. We are recording, so just be advised that's going on, a live stream YouTube video, so the public can see this now, and also it'll be available for future viewings if you want to go back and look at it for any reason. So today we're going to do a quick round of introductions, I think would be appropriate. We're going to review the ARPA, what's going on with ARPA in Athens-Clarke County, the role of the Athens Homeless Coalition as the advisory group, talk about conflict of interest and abstention from voting, and then we'll go through a quick overview of the RFP homeless applications and then what's going on next. So I'll go ahead and start. My name is Marcy Irwin. I'm the Community Development Administrator at Housing and Community Development for Athens-Clarke County. And
hi, I'm Alejandra Calva. I'm the Community Impact Administrator dealing with a lot of ARPA things here in the county. Nice to see you all.
I'm Samantha Gambuti. I'm with the Community Development Division under Marcy, and I'm the Community Development Specialist.
Hi, my name is Damaris Cohen. I'm Community Development Coordinator for HCD.
And Lillian Strankowski, I'm the Homeless Specialist with the Community Development Division at HCD.
And I'm Linda Ford. I'm with the Downtown Development Authority.
Chris Greiner, Chief Financial Officer, Clarke County School District, also the Board Treasurer for the Homeless Coalition.
I'm Alexa Reininger, MSW student, and I've been helping out with the Athens Homeless Coalition.
Corey Scott, I'm Compliance Analyst for ARPA funding with Housing and Community Development.
Cameron McLaughlin, Equity Engagement Coordinator, ARPA Equity Engagement Coordinator, and I'm Housing and Inclusion Office.
And we have Cole Shackelford is joining us from the Homeless Coalition remotely. He is, I don't know if he can speak, but hopefully he can hear us. So we're going on.
I can hear y'all all good. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. Great.
Perfect. I'm a local small business owner, and I also serve as the Secretary of the Homeless Coalition.
Fantastic. There are a few committee members from the Homeless Coalition that aren't with us today. Sally, Kimmel Shepherd, and it looks like Catherine Adams is not here. And I think that's it. Okay. So without further ado, we'll just press on. And this is a lovely intermediate slide. So the ARPA overview, as you know, Athens-Clarke County has been allocated about 350 billion state and local Coronavirus Recovery Fund Act. We got 57.6 million of that. In Athens-Clarke County, the Mayor Commission decided kind of what pots of money that was going to go into. We're working with the Prevention and Reduction of Homelessness pot of money. As you know, all the funds have to be allocated by the end of this calendar year and expended by the end of 2026. This is a overview slide of what's going on. You may have seen this slide in our previous meeting, but just kind of a refresher. This is what's been going on with the homeless funding. We got a total of 10.1 million. That little orange slab at the bottom, that 2.8 is available through the RFPs. That's what we're working with today. The rest has all been allocated and is under contract at this time. Alrighty, so why is the Homeless Coalition here? The Mayor Commission, designated the Homeless Coalition as the ARPA advisory group for this homeless pot of money. So a previous iteration of the board sat on the strategic planning process. We had a lot of in-person meetings, stakeholder engagement, things that led up to the creation of the strategic plan to reduce and prevent homelessness. And then now we're at the point of the RFP. And in January of this year, they directed the Homeless Coalition Board to participate in the RFP process. So that's why we're here today. And so these are the members of that were designated by the Homeless Coalition Board to review the application. So we had 6 members from the Homeless Advisory Group Committee, and then we had 7 Housing and Community Development and GIO, is that right, Pete? Inclusion Office, sorry. The Inclusion Office participate in the whole review panel. So we had a total of 13 reviewers on this application process. Okay, and y'all are all familiar with this little box that was at the bottom of your each review scoring sheet regarding a conflict of interest and confidentiality. So for every person, you had to designate whether you had a conflict of interest. We did have one member that abstained from voting because they had a conflict with one of the applications. I will say that the average score was not impacted by her not participating. Was that zero wasn't factored in. So it was just the averages from whoever was actually reviewed and rated that application.
Is there anybody present, just one last check, anybody else that after you reviewed the application, you realized that you did have a conflict of interest among those of us who rated? Okay, seeing none, perfect, good confirmation.
Thank you. Making sure. All right, we're going to barrel on through. So as you know, there were 3 categories or RFPs that applicants could apply to: low barrier shelter, supportive services, unsheltered initiatives. We did have a few applicants that applied for multiple RFPs, which was allowed as long as they did not exceed 3 applications. So, and we got a pretty good mix, as we'll see in a later slide, of what actually came in. This was a recap of the evaluation criteria. The total was 100. Everyone on the review panel had an equal participation in the review. So it wasn't like HCD had a portion and the coalition side had a portion. Everybody reviewed on every aspect of the application. So we have 2.83 million available in ARPA funds. We received 11 total applications for a total of $6.5 million. Obviously, there was a $3.7 million gap of funding. So it was a difficult decision, I think, to kind of decide who was going to get funded. So of the applications received, we had 5 proposals for low barrier shelter. One was a congregate format, which means, the folks were all stay together. And then 4 of them were non-congregate projects for a total of a little over $3 million just for the low barrier shelter RFP section. We had 4 proposals for supportive services. 1 was for diversion and rapid exit, and 3 workforce development applications for a little over $3 million for that component. And then for unsheltered initiatives, we had 2 proposals, 1 for physical healthcare services and 1 for the housing surge encampment type project at $384,000. So this is why we're all here today. I do have a few printouts if somebody needs one to look at, just because it might be easier to see it closer. Basically what we did is this is ranked by an average of committee score. So not, and you can see 1 through 11 right there. And then there was also a part of the review matrix where you could vote yes or no to a project if you didn't think we should move forward or not. And so the bottom 3 there, that's rankings 9, 10, and 11, the committee voted no on it, basically. They didn't think we should move forward with those. We can revisit some of this today. That's why we're here to kind of go through each one and see if we're all on board with how these rankings panned out. We have 2.83 million available. That average recommended, that's just an average of what people put in there. Some people didn't put anything, didn't fill that part out. So, and some people put more than what was, more than what the requested amount was for, as you can see. So let me just take a second to talk about that. So the ones that are in red were not included in that $2.865 million at the bottom. We just did not include those. So that was the total. So we're still over what we actually have available. So we're going to have to make some decisions. You won't have to make those decisions this time. So basically what we want from you today, from the committee today, is to just review the ranking, see if you are all comfortable with those rankings. So if you had one that ranked low that you think, whoa, this should be way higher, that's what we're here today to talk about. So I guess we could just open the floor if there's any questions, or if anybody has any concerns, or if there was an application you saw that you were like, why is this person being recommended? Because I saw something that didn't make me think it was eligible. That's why we're here today. So feel free to jump in if you would like. She'll take a minute to absorb. Okay, so we'll just start at the bottom and work our way up to see if we are all kind of on the same. So the Twin Angels, Inc. Homeless to Home project was the 60-bed congregate shelter application. They requested $818,000 and some change. And so 7 of the committee voted not to approve this. And their committee score was at 45 points out of a possible 100. Does anybody have any issues with that one or comments or anything they'd like to ask or had a question about? Nope. All right, moving right on up. So the Twin Angels, Inc. Harmony Haven was a 4-unit non-congregate shelter. They asked for $462,000 and 8 of the committee members voted not to move forward with this one. Any questions on that one? Y'all feel comfortable with that decision not to move forward? Okay. The ranking that came in at number 9 was About Face International, leading people to a new way of life. They asked for $1.7 million. Seven of the group decided not to move forward with it, but 5 were okay with it. So that scoring came in at 54 out of 100 for the committee average. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about not moving forward with this particular contract or proposal? Okay. All righty. So Economic Justice Coalition, Above and Beyond Home Care, asked for $900,000. They ranked 8th out of 11, and their committee score was 60.64, and the average recommended amount was $493,000. So I guess part of the conversation we need to have today is just to make sure that, you know, if you're okay with the rankings, the amount that's going to be recommended, we're going to have to go back and kind of look at to make sure we're obviously not going over the 2.83 that we have available. But if the committee's comfortable with moving forward with a recommendation for the average amount, that's kind of what we need to hear from you today. So I'm going to stick a pin real quick in this. So what we're going to do is, based on the outcome of today's meeting, HCD staff, which is probably going to be Alejandra and I, are going to get together and prepare a recommendation to the mayor and commission for them to make the final decision. So we're not really approving funding today. We're working together to get a recommendation to go to the mayor commission. They are the ultimate deciders of who gets the funding here. So they could just say, oh, thanks for your recommendations, we're going to go a different way. Or they could say, great job, guys, we're going to go with what you say. So, you know, it's really up to them, you know, but this is our backup and our documentation that we reviewed, and, you know, we feel comfortable moving this forward as a recommendation to them. So I'll just move right along then. Any comments on the Economic Justice Coalition? Any questions about that project? No. Okay. How about where are we at? Athens Wellness Clinic, Healthcare for the Homeless. This was one of the unsheltered initiatives for the unsheltered population. They asked for $184,000. We've come in at 7 with a recommendation of an average recommended amount of $167,900. Does anybody have any concerns or questions about that particular application? Healthcare for the homeless. Nope. Okay. Ready. Okay, moving right on up. Our 6 out of 10 ranking is Project Safe's emergency shelter improvement. These are improvements for low-barrier domestic violence shelter. They asked for $142,000, and the average recommendation of funding is $136 and around $136,000. Any questions? Looks like overwhelmingly the committee was good with this. And then the next is the Advantage Behavioral Health Services Low Barrier Shelter on Mitchell Bridge Road. They asked for $1.5 million. And the average recommended funding was $1.3 million. Any questions on that one or concerns? All right, y'all did your homework. Y'all were prepared. So the next is the Family Promise of Athens, the diversion program. They requested $200,000 for that, and the committee's average recommendation is 176,923. Questions or comments on the Family Promise diversion program? Nope. All right, the next we have is Divas Who Win Freedom Center, the She Works Employment Initiative. They requested $200,250. 12 of the committee wanted to move forward, 1 did not. The average recommended funding was 176,822. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about that? We did have one of the committee members not want to move forward with this one. So if you have any concerns or issues, we can talk through it. All right, we're going on. All right, super. This is going to be a super fast meeting. Okay, the second ranked proposal was from Athens Area Habitat for Humanity. They were coming in with partnership with Family Promise to do an expansion of some units for non-congregate units for low barrier shelter at $163,000. The average recommended funding is $148,768. Any questions on that application or proposal? All right. And then our top ranked proposal came from the Advantage Behavioral Health Services, the Encampment Crisis Response Team. They requested $200,000. The average recommended was more than what they asked for at $203,618. So is there any questions or concerns about that? All right, so it seems like we're all okay with this ranking and not moving forward with the 3 that were our 3 lowest ranked, moving forward in recommendation. So my question is, as far as the average recommended amount, you know, are we okay with that average recommended amount? Do you think that's out of line for anybody, or are you cool with this summary? Does it look right to y'all?
How like in the weeds do you want to get on like funding recommendations right now?
That's up to the committee how we want to do it. I feel like, you know, if we use this as a jumping off point when we go back to the office, I can't see us deviating much from what the average recommended is, because why would we? It's right here.
Yeah.
It might be tweaking. I know as a contract manager, I kind of hate having cents at the end. It's probably to go to the board like that. And we might be rounding up, you know, to make it work.
Clarification. Question, are we able to I guess to recommend more than what the project asked for?
We can. We have that ability as a committee to award more than what they requested. Of course, ultimately, it'll be the mayor and commission who say yes or no. We have seen that happen before also, where the commission just awards additional. So, yeah.
So if there's one that you think, oh, they probably need more money, or they could spend the money if you know of a need in the community, we can take that into consideration as we make our decisions. But it's up to you all to kind of tell us what you're thinking there. So for instance, for the encampment response team, obviously somebody that was reviewing thought they needed more than 200,000, so they added more to it. So I don't know how much more. They might have put 500 and somebody put 0. So there's no,
right.
You know, that's why we're here today, kind of talk through it.
So Marcy, if like most of these are close to what the requested amounts were, except for the Economic Justice Coalition. So for instance, go back to them and say, this is what the average recommend is. I'm assuming they could say, we're not interested because there's too big a gap there. So what happens to that? Does it just get, I guess there would be a recommendation to reallocate that recommend, or does it just?
You mean go back to the agency and say, no, we asked for $1 million, you're only giving us 5, we can't make it happen.
Fine, and they just say we can't do that, so we withdraw. And then does that, I know we're still a little over, would that money then kind of look at some of these that weren't fully funded at the requested amount, or what would happen to that pot of money, I guess?
It would probably be reallocated back to make up that gap from where.
Okay.
And if, you know, it would probably go, who's at the top? You know, did they get what they needed? No.
And just kind of start going down. Okay, that makes sense.
That would be my methodology.
Yeah. I can't I mean, I of course looked at all these, but the Justice Coalition, I don't know, like if they get funded for half of that, they may go, yeah, we can't make that work, because I don't know what their, you know, their financial situation, they may just say no. I was just curious.
Right. I will say that, you know, not for ARPA funds, but for other activities like CDBG, for instance, we do this annually for our CDBG allocation. There's never enough money. No one has ever turned a portion down.
Gotcha. That's, I was kind of wondering. I just knew that was a
Right,
big gap on that.
I understand. I know where
So I was just
you're,
curious.
is it going to be feasible to make the project?
Right.
And we, of course, yeah, whenever we do award less money than was requested, we allow the agency to come back with revised performance measurements and things like that. So we're not holding them up to 100% of people served with only 50% of the funding. So we do have that ability during the contracting process as needed.
All right, thank you.
But the overall scope of the project as far as what they're doing will not change, they say they're going to provide low barrier shelter units. We're not going to let them change to a whole different activity type. Right, correct.
Thank
you. How y'all feeling? Feeling okay about this? You want to think on it for a minute?
I think my only thing is that I'm unsure about I just think some of the ones that are higher up where they aren't recommended for the funding that they request the full amount that they funded. And I think some of them might be able to spend that easily. So I'm just wondering if like EJC, who ranked lower, maybe doesn't need as much funding, and we can make sure some of those other ones are bumped up where we know that they can like use it and spend it.
Okay.
I just wanted to toss that thought out there. That's all.
I sort of want to follow that too. I wonder if when we were in the concept, I can only speak for myself, in the concept of creating it, I like had my side calculator thinking I needed to hit an amount. And so maybe the recommendations, and I'm the person who recommended over, sorry, everybody. I'm used to research grants, but that if in that time, that was like what the action was. And now upon reflection, like, is this the space to have any conversation about like, making recommendations for creating some of the grants at the full amounts. So
This is the space to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're looking, so for instance, you see Athens Area Habitat, the Family Promise expansion, they asked for 163,000 to do the creation of two new units. If you feel like that needs to be 100% funded, this is where we need to have that conversation. And we're going to bring it back, as we're preparing our recommendations for the commission. Definitely, that's what we'll do.
And especially looking at the ones, if we aren't going to fund the bottom three, then maybe if people did say they should get some money, that could also maybe change where that allocation is going. If you were like, okay, originally I said they could get funding, but now we're gonna say like, no, let's put the funding elsewhere. We can look at like where that's going for the other agencies.
So how do you think the best way to do this? You want to start at the top and say, we're comfortable funding this at 100% of the recommended amount, and who we're comfortable with maybe not funding at 100%? Does that sound fair? Okay, well, let me get my notes. I know that, I'm just taking notes over there too. So for the encampment response crisis team, they were actually recommended the average recommended was more than they requested. Do we want to leave that there? Do we feel like that's appropriate? Do we want to bump that down to 100% of what they asked? Do we feel comfortable moving, recommending more than someone asked for? That's up to the group.
I think, maybe bump it down to 200.
Yeah.
Just.
Okay, so are we okay with that consensus kind of
Precedent.
no more than what they've asked?
Yeah, requested, yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Because I wonder, like, the habitat expansion is ranked so high and the recommended amount is like not that far off of their ask.
Well, somebody didn't fill that out,
Yeah,
right? So if they put 0 in, or maybe their ranking wasn't that high for that age, depending on how this is the average.
sure.
So, I could see. So for the Athens Area Habitat Project, do we feel comfortable at 100% for that one?
Well, are we gonna go down and say 100% and then not know where we're taking it from?
Well, I guess what my question is, maybe the better way is, if we're cool at doing 100% for everybody, who would we be willing to do less than 100%?
That's not much.
Right. Is that a better question, a better way to approach it?
I would say for the habit expansion, in my view, we can leave it at where it is. Because I recognize that in their budget, they have allocated for the shelter coordinator salary, but they also have support for that, non-government support to support the salary. So that would have been about $25,000 of the 163
Okay,
they're requesting. So if it is a case that others may agree to bump it up, that's okay. But if we find that we are going to have a challenge at the total, we can leave it there as the majority of the focus would really about dealing with the expansion of the facility and leaving the salary off.
got you. Okay, so that's part of where this is gonna get tricksy.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that that's something that we would look at when we're preparing our recommendations and notes to the mayor and commission. So I kind of want to leave it a little higher level right now, because there's just no way that we're gonna
I
be
agree.
able to narrow it down to the penny like that. But those are things that we look at. So if we go down and you say, okay, let's use economic justice because they were ranked 8th, right? They were the last one. And we had 3 people in the committee say that they didn't want to even approve it for funding. So we'll use them as an example. So if you're okay with recommending at the average recommended amount, that's, probably, I don't know what that is, 60% of what they asked for. If you're okay with that, fine. If you think we should be looking more than that, or if you think they need to go less, that's kind of, go ahead, Cameron.
Since you're talking about Economic Justice Coalition, I'm going through like their proposal and stuff right now in their budget. And it seems like that 493,000 is really only gonna cover like the CNAs and their training. So I'm not sure how effective their program would be if we're cutting off all the other funding, seeing as though they don't have their own funding to support. So I don't know if it's like, all right, we take them down to just pay for the CNAs and the CNA training and then cut off all the extra chunk of that. I think that'd be like 400 and maybe $50,000. So that's another 40,000 or so dollars. Or not really fund the program at all, because I'm not sure how it would work if we're just paying for the CNAs and the CNA training. So
Well, and again, it would be up to the agency. If we were to go back to them saying, we can only give you 490, the agency can get back to us and say, no, we don't want any of it, or this is how we could still make it work. Perhaps, I believe their proposal was running through December of 2026. Perhaps they just kind of shorten it a little bit. That might be one way that they could sort of make up for the gap. But if somebody, I guess the question is, for example, for EJC, if there's somebody here who is very opposed to the idea of giving them less than what they have right now or more than, then I think that's what we want to hear now. Or if you're generally okay with giving them about 50% of, their requested funding, whatever that percentage is. And if that's the case, we can just, again, we'll put our math skills to work and kind of make all the pieces fit according to what's most needed. Again, kind of from top to bottom.
I think if there's an option to go back to them and sort of say, here's what's decided, what would you like to do? How would you like to change your objectives and deliverables to see if it can still be something that's useful?
So that's not gonna happen before we go to the mayor and commission. So that would happen, we have to put our recommendation forward to mayor and commission. And if they say, okay, yes, we're recommending at X amount of dollars, then we would contact the agency at that time, once the actual funding recommendation has been made by mayor and commission. Because this is all kind of a platform for mayor and commission to make their decision off of. Then we would talk to the agency and say, okay, you've been recommended for X amount, we need to revisit your deliverables and your performance measures and your budget and see if this is going to be feasible for you. If not, then that money would come back and the mayor and commission would have to reallocate somewhere else.
I think Cole has his hand up.
Okay, Cole.
I think for me, the committee score for the EJC one is so much closer to the 3 bottom ones than it is to any of the ones above it. I mean, it's a 6-point difference from the 3 below it versus a almost 24-point difference from the ones above it. So I think my recommendation would be moving the funding from there to fully fund all the ones above it, and kind of allocating it towards all the ones that have, over an 80 score right now.
I agree with that.
I agree too.
I think just looking at, that's kind of where my recommendations at this high level are, that's where my brain is going, just looking at scores. And I think just looking at, yeah, like those who are just even slightly off from where they could be, where they could be fully funded, I think that could make a big difference.
So just to recap, because the gap between the average committee score between number 7 and 8 is so big, fully fund 1 through 7 and then whatever's left, see if economic justice, that would fill in that gap. Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying, unless it's
Okay.
a super tiny amount. I mean, I can do the math real quick and see what that number is. But
Okay. How does the committee feel about that? Because we had 10 people want to move forward with this one and only 3 against it.
I feel slightly different. I'd probably take a little funding. I would fund EJC a little bit less, and I would fund the low barrier shelter from ABHS less, just because it's such a large amount. And even though it scored low for me, EJC, I think the program still sounded interesting and like it could have some impact on the community. And knowing that it's a smaller agency, still wanting to give them an opportunity to receive funding and be able to try and get this program up and running. So that's where I'm torn on. I recognize that it scored low, but I also think that it still deserves some funding. So I would take from those two maybe.
Go ahead, Cole.
I did rough math on it, and I'm not Chris over there, so I'm not as good at this. But it looks like it would drop it almost just above half of what we have it as right now. I think I have it at 228,000 is what it would drop it by roughly, unless I'm doing my math horribly.
You did that right, Cole. I'm doing it in my head, so it's.
I'm doing it on my
That's about
calculator,
right.
not my head.
I just took each one and kind of went up, but yeah, I think it's about 228. So.
That's quite a reduction for that proposal.
I think my concern going back to EJC is I don't know, they asked for so much and I think it goes back, are they going to be effective? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a question more for them. I just know going through the process, what my concern would be, how effective is it going to be? If they get, even if they get the 493, that still doesn't cover a lot of what they asked for.
Is there a minimum amount that you would feel comfortable giving to EJC just as and I know that's a really hard question, but welcome to our world, right? Like, a minimum amount that you would feel like, okay, they should be able to at least do enough. And again, ultimately, it'll be up to the agency to say, yes, we accept, or we don't need it or want it.
I mean, I still like the idea of fully funding. The only one, again, the low barrier shelter for ABHS, just because it's such a large amount, I kind of agree with that, but definitely fully funding the others and then seeing what's going to. That was my only concern with that one from the beginning, which I did score high on that low barrier shelter, but I think it's the request is so large.
Yeah, I almost think leaving ABHS where it is at the average recommended and then fully funding the other ones. And then see
What would that leave for Chris? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm about to redo the math. All right, hold on.
So right now, we're talking about no funding or like $200,000 for economic justice, which might be too much of a cut for their proposal. Or do we want to say, no, let's make it a 50% recommendation of what they asked for as a floor for everybody? I don't know. And then the difference between the 50% and what they've been recommended for, start fully funding towards the top.
I would think a very rough math, at least 400,000, because I do worry if it starts getting too low, then like really, what are they going to be able to do with like 200,000?
There was some in their budget, from a programmatic standpoint, there were some personnel issues that, were falling on the admin line that would not be, we can't pay that much for admin for ARPA, right? So there was going to have to be some kind of readjustment of the budget if they were recommended for funding anyway. So that's And that might happen on all of them when we get in, you know, when you really start with the final recommendation. When you're talking about scope of the work and the budget, that's gonna have to be honed in for all the activities before we enter into contracts.
I would bring EJC down to 100.
410.
I'm good with 400.
400
For the, yeah.
agency, are you?
With that.
So we don't.
Because I personally, I think,
I'm sorry. No, go ahead. No, you-
I think their most important aspect of their program are for the nurses, right? And I feel like the 400,000 can pay for the nurses.
I think it was like, it would take them down, like, to fully fund the rest, and this is just rough, it would take about 83,000 away from EJC, which will leave about 410. But I think we're over remind me again what the total amount is. We have the
2.83 million.
right, so we're a little over there, so we gotta factor that in a little bit too, so
Okay. Yeah. But
that might take them a little bit below 400, but.
The minimum funding for EJC would be 400, and then we'll make the math work to fund this 100% as many as possible. And if there's anybody else that doesn't get 100%, then maybe it would be Advantage Low Barrier Shelter, and they'll just kind of get that difference.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
How you feeling about that, Cole?
I'm in agreement with that.
All right, Ruby. Well, that's.
You guys made it
really, that is really helpful. Okay. I think that this was the hardest part that we had to talk about today. So, thank you. Thank you for that input. That's great. Yeah. Okay, so move on to the next slide. All right, so our next steps. We have to put this information together and get it in our little system for the next board meeting, which the board meeting and the voting will happen on May 7th, but there's going to be some work sessions and agenda setting meeting in April, which it seems like we're really far out, but it goes pretty fast once you get it in the system. So hopefully as soon as the Mayor Commission approve funding, we will start contracting on May 8th, the very next day. And then we've got to get all of these activities under contract by the end of this year. And they'll have through December of 2026 to fully expend their ARPA funds. Any questions on that next steps process? That's it. Any questions on anything else? No. All right. So what I think is going to happen is we'll be doing the minutes from this meeting, and we're going to bring those back to the next Homeless Coalition board meeting for you all to have an opportunity to accept the minutes, or approve the minutes. So we'll be in compliance. So anything else? All right. So I guess we're finished right now. We're going to go ahead and end the meeting, and I guess we can stop streaming now. Yeah. And y'all have a super day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul, for joining your role.
Yes, thanks, Paul. Nice. Good conversation.
Hey, what's wrong? You got to press it again. Stop live.